We're shook, very particularly shook, by a very interesting book this week called Mumbai, A Million Islands.
A strange sense of loss or change that is happening in this city, which is visible to every person who lives in this city. There have been references in all kinds of places. I've seen artists commenting upon it. And people are wondering, ye kya ho raha hai? What is this turbocharged transformation? The picking up of marginalized communities and placing them on the outskirts of the city. And in their place, where there was a slum, there are luxury cars and luxury apartments. That had to be recorded in my book. This was 7 or 8 years ago, and that had to be recorded. It's taken me this long to record it. Today what is happening is, when a building has to come down, and let's move from slums, when a building has to come down, many cooperative societies are saying, they are taking the help of engineers and saying, leave us to our devices, we will build our own building.
What is your sense in the way Bombay, which initially was the first working class city of India, if you like, of modern India, what is its relationship with its working class now?
Our relationship with the working class now has been very transactional, very, very transactional. There is no entity called the working class left anymore, I would say. In many ways, the working class is now the service working class, and that has no clout, as we all know. If you are an illegal in Dharavi, you are occupying land illegally anyway. But if you're an illegal, that means you are not a resident before a particular time. In this case, 2001 or something, and therefore do not have papers. You will get a place in Dharavi, somewhere in the corner, tucked away.
The dedication, rather, that Sidharth has, it's from Kaifi Azmi's Makan, and he wrote this almost autobiographically when he was on the streets of Bombay before he transits to being one of the best known lyricists and poets that the Bombay film industry produced or can claim. He wrote, "Aaj ki raat bahut garm hawa chalti hai, aaj ki raat na footpath pe neend aayegi, sab utho, main bhi uthूं, तुम भी उठो, तुम भी उठो, कोई खिड़की इसी दीवार में खुल जाएगी."
I have not made it a seriously grim book. This is not a book about people feeling feeling that they are victims. There's no victimhood anywhere. There is only a resolve, and there is an urge. Even in his words, there is some sense of wanting to live with dignity. It's not only a cry for rebellion, but it's also that there is that window will open and there'll be light in the window, and so therefore there is hope.
Hello and welcome to BookShook. We're shook, very particularly shook, by a very interesting book this week called Mumbai, A Million Islands. The author is Sidharth Bhatia. He's a senior journalist of about 4 decades, a writer, columnist, a keen observer of everything that is social, cultural and political. He already has 3 books under his belt: Cinema's Modern, The Navketan Story in 2011, Amar Akbar Anthony, yes, on the film in 2013, and India Psychedelic, the story of a rocking generation in 2014. This is a socio-cultural history of India in the 60s and 70s. But most importantly, Sidharth is a founding editor of The Wire and a much-loved colleague and friend. That's a disclaimer I wanted to up at the very start. So Sidharth, how did this book begin for you personally? Was there a particular moment, image, or a story from Mumbai that made you feel, gosh, I have to write this?
You know, Seema, I pondered about this for a long time, and I have been asked this also. Where did it begin from? You know, this is something, a strange sense of loss or change that is happening in this city, which is visible to every person who lives in this city. There have been references in all kinds of places. I've seen artists commenting upon it. And people are wondering, ye kya ho raha hai? What is this turbocharged transformation of Mumbai, which of course always changes. It's a changing city. But why this sudden burst? Why these skyscrapers and towers so fast coming up? Where are those other older neighborhoods going? One particular incident I do recall, it's not an incident really, but one particular instance where in the lane I lived, which is not very broad, building next to me, we suddenly saw the blue corrugated sheets going up, which means code word for it's about to be brought down. And then the construction work started. There was a lot of noise, a lot of dust, a lot of traffic suddenly, which the lane, I'm sure, will not be able to handle as and when the thing comes up. And my question to myself was, these people who were living here, who I used to see all the time, where have they gone? So that was a kind of a, I would say, not a trigger, but a kind of starting point. And then I started reading about, slum schemes. Entire slums used to disappear. Where do these people go? Established communities where you knew your neighbor. Of course, it was a slum, but you knew your neighbor. Where do these people go? And that was a kind of a journey which led me to investigate further. And it has turned out to be a book about change, about displacement, about commercial interest overtaking any kind of human interest. Of course, that happens all the time. And the picking up of marginalized communities and placing them on the outskirts of the city. And in their place, where there was a slum, there are, luxury cars and luxury apartments. That had to be recorded in my book. This was 7 or 8 years ago, and that had to be recorded. It's taken me this long to record it.
Sure. No, it's really it's a complex book and clearly a difficult one to do, particularly as you live in the city. So in the introduction, you juxtapose these mega projects like Coastal Road, Atal Setu, with very chronic underinvestment in public transport. And you kind of argue that nobody is given a thought really to the plight of the common citizen. So this upgrading, quote unquote, is actually a political project of optics and elite mobility, if you like, rather than urban planning. How conscious do you think policymakers are of this real choice that they're making?
They understand the choice, but for them it is no choice. For them, the grander, the better. The more the investment, the better. And the more visibility, as you call it, optics, the more visibility, the more flash, the better. The coastal road, by some estimates, has cost the Mumbai Municipal Corporation 20,000 crores. Construction went on during COVID lockdown. So you can imagine the kind of dedication the politicians as well as the civil servants had to say, we isko to banana hi hai. And the irony is that it was meant to be, even at its peak in the initial years, for 75,000 cars per day, which is a fraction of the number of cars in the city, and or commuters for that matter. And even today, it is reaching 22,000. So imagine that 22,000 cars per day are benefiting from 20,000 crores of investment. The trains continue to be overpacked. There are X number of deaths, I think 6-7 deaths a day on the train tracks. Buses are reducing. And so you can see where the priorities lie. So as far as the policymaker is concerned, it's not a choice. It's a decision. There is no dilemma. And don't forget that in the end, this is true of every city in India, this is true of every city in the world now. Everything eventually becomes a real estate play. You do the coastal road and you somehow create luxury apartments in and around it. So it's ultimately it's a play to build more and more luxury towers because that's what the developers want and that's what the builders demand and that's what they get. Now, whether the customers demand it or not, that's a complex question. We can discuss that.
So you write that the reclamation has symbolized a major shift in the spirit of the city. You write from Victorian to an international city. And you later show how Nariman Point and the Bandra Kurla complex, BKC, repeat the same pattern of congestion, exclusion, and poor planning. So if we trace the entire arc of how Bombay has kind of gone, all the way down from reclamation to today's corporate districts. What does that tell us about Bombay-Mumbai's long-term political economy? Who has historically captured the gains from the land and who has systematically borne the costs?
So, quick history lesson on reclamation. When the British finally took over, they immediately realized they came here for the harbor, but they immediately realized that unless there was traffic and movement and therefore settlings, this city would not amount to much. 7 islands, 7 marshy islands. So they started it. It came in the late 18th century when two islands were connected with a causeway, and that's at Worli. And then after that, they kept on sewing the islands together. But that thing of bringing it together, whatever the colonial impulses were, the thing brought it together. As my title says, a million islands. Now, what is happening is the island reclamations are for these kind of luxury projects, these kind of wasteful, according to me, wasteful grand projects like the Colonial Road and also bridges connecting the city with the mainland, which, Mumbai still continues to be an island, connects to the mainland. All that is to encourage more, shall we say, more a luxury economy, an upper middle class economy, which leaves out large populations. Mumbai still has 50% of its residents living in the slums. And many of these projects leave them out completely. So the impulse today is not to bring it together. And then the sad part is, as you said, Nariman Point and BKC, both those places on paper really well planned, and within 5-7 years you can see the problems because there was no thinking. There was problems, no parking, roads are narrow, ins and exits and entries are very, very constricted, and so that is beginning to happen. So they don't think step 3, 4, 5, 8, 10, 12. They think step 1 and 1.5 and 2, and that's about it. The British planning was far superior. I don't have any hesitation to say it. Their bridges have lasted over 100 years and are still being brought down. Why? Because you need to bring down an old bridge and you make a new bridge. There is no reason. And that bridge, I promise you, will be brought down in 30 years because this has happened. So there is no
bridges and infrastructure too.
Grand plan.
When you describe the vertical slums produced by in situ rehabilitation, and I quote, barren and dark and very soon converted almost into vertical slums. Also like dirty. So you're effectively arguing that a policy-created housing can also reproduce the very pathologies that they are meant to be sorting out. And you speak to these people and they speak of their lives in their in situ buildings. Did you find any serious kind of counter models within Mumbai that suggested a different social imagination of low-income housing? We have a lot of other examples of that. You have stuff in Kerala going on and other parts of India, also in Orissa and in Goa. But within Bombay, somehow that kind of low-cost housing, I haven't seen examples of. But did you run into any other stuff?
So that's a very good question. For a long time there were NGOs. There are still NGOs which had said that bring the community into planning. In fact, there are places where they have said hand it over to the community and let them plan, or let them at least add their voices. Now, what happened just now is the policy says when a slum is taken over, you've got to you clear the slum after everyone signs up and you build your luxury flats, but you've got to give those slum dwellers pakka houses. As far as those people are concerned, more often than not, they are very happy because now they've got their own private unit and they're getting it more or less free. They've got a toilet inside, big plus.
Yeah.
But what they don't know, or they do know, and they said we'll deal with it, is they will have to pay maintenance. Because if they don't pay maintenance, the elevators will stop working. And that has happened. If you're living on the 4th or 5th floor and the elevator stops working on a daily basis, you are really in a bad I got instance of, somebody who couldn't go up for 2 days because he was just too frail to climb up. So then the other thing that's happened is that's a very sociological thing, and that has not been corrected. In fact, that's a policy not to correct it, is that in a slum, you knew your neighbor for many years. And in the words of somebody, a slum dweller who said that when a little girl, a small school girl walks from place A to place end of the lane, there are 10 pairs of eyes watching her. Today, if there is something happening in the next apartment and there is a lot of noise and it's clear that there's something not very good going on in that family, you say, I don't know that person. Why should I interfere? Second, or third rather, is that the policy has been very carefully created in a way that the people of one particular lane or one particular small patch in a slum area will never be put together in these buildings. You see what's happening. If you don't put them together, they're not likely to create trouble. So you put somebody from one part of for those who know Mumbai, you put a slum dweller from Kolaba next to a slum dweller who has come from, let's say, Baikala, which is a bit far away, and they don't know each other. And therefore, that creates a sociological situation where they take years to develop relationships. The model that I have heard of, but I don't know how successful it has been, was when an NGO got some people together, managed to procure some land from the government, I think, and told them, you finance it, and the government and the banks will help you self-finance. And but I don't know how far it's not whether it has been a success. Today, what is happening is when a building has to come down, and let's move from slums. When a building has to come down, many cooperative societies are saying, they are taking the help of engineers and saying, leave us to our devices, we will build our own building. So at least there is some awareness emerging among middle class people to say that we don't want luxury flat. We will get larger flats, but we don't want to live in situ. We want to live in a building that we have created. So that is just started. An engineer acquaintance of mine is one of the engineers who's helping. So I think that bears watching in the coming years.
Yeah. So just going ahead, your chapter on mills turning into malls and on central Bombay's complete transformation after Datta Samant and the strike, the subsequent closures of mills is clearly a hinge point. It's a point at which the city kind of changes. But what follows after that, and after Datta Samant's killing, his assassination, is kind of Parel, as you say, it becomes, a little more than a location for more shiny buildings. But looking back from the vantage point of 2026, what is your sense in the way Bombay, which initially was the first working class city of India, if you like, of modern India, what is its relationship with its working class now?
So manufacturing has disappeared. Well, let me just give you a couple of bullet points. Manufacturing has disappeared because of several reasons, pollution being one of them. But the mills vanished. And it's easy to blame Datta Samant for it. I think there were far more complicated reasons. But manufacturing had disappeared. We have become a service city from a manufacturing city. And the service industry, you either have gig workers or you have people working in restaurants as waiters or something. And it's a humming city, even in the film industry, even in the ad industry. So unions are few and far between. So the relationship of Bombay's labor unions went on one of the earliest strikes in the city in the early part of 20th century, and their later strikes were nationalistic strikes in support of Gandhi or in support of against the Raj. That has simply vanished. I mean, today the few morchas that have happened in the city, massive morchas, have been morchas for reservations coming from outside. But our relationship with the working class now has been very transactional, very, very transactional. There is no entity called the working class left anymore, I would say, in many ways. The working class is now the service working class, and that has no clout, as we all know. We are seeing all over the country.
No, you're right. So the sort of gigification that we see where the working class practically gets erased, it's just purely transactional, as you put it, has been kind of a national phenomenon, probably following from the disappearance as an entity in Bombay. In your chapter, Ghettos Old and New, when you talk about the long history of Muslim trading and shipping families, you track it all the way down to the riots. But we'll come to the riots in a subsequent question. But do you see contemporary Mumbai is entering a whole new phase of communalized urban governance? We saw in the local elections also this time, one of the talking points was the fear that Bombay may have a Muslim a mayor. So just things like that. How have we kind of ended here?
I must make it clear that this city always had a communal streak, always. Because during 92, 93, when the riots happened, I did some digging. I spoke quite a lot at that time. I was in a Bombay newspaper. I spoke, and the digging, I found that there were top companies that had never hired a Muslim ever in the 100 years that they existed. They had never hired. Even today, some of the biggest industrial names in the country which are based here do not hire Muslims. They may have the odd Muslim in a white collar job, but otherwise they do not. So that has happened. Even in the past, there was prejudice, but the prejudice did not get fanned. Nobody fanned it. Nobody gave it legitimacy. I saw that happening in the late 80s when people in very genteel drawing rooms started saying things against the Muslims. And few years later, these riots happened. Then it became, almost kosher. You start seeing ads of construction, of under construction buildings where they said only Hindus. You start seeing, that is actually atomized even further. Only Gujaratis, only vegetarian Gujaratis, etc. And I spoke to Muslims. I decided that I must find out why they are. I mean, a ghetto is a quick word to use, which gives you a quick assessment of what that place is. But I saw congregations of Muslims to areas where they felt safe. And I think I've interviewed this young film scriptwriter who moved from flat to flat because she was single and she was Muslim and she was a girl. So she had to move from hither and thither in the film industry, mind you. I mean, this is not to blame the film industry for her travails, but it's not that she was, in a glamour place, so they should have welcomed her. I think the relationship is tense, and the communalism is blatant. It occasionally goes underground, but it's there. My challenge was to the fact that was Mumbai cosmopolitan at all? And my answer is yes, it was. It's not that it wasn't, far more cosmopolitan than other places. But that cosmopolitanism was ultimately a little bit of a veneer, which could be ripped off quite fast. And I feel bad with this.
So is it But is it fair to ask when did Mumbai, which is, as you're saying, this cosmopolitan haven where there are Gujaratis, Parsis, Jews, Muslims, all there, when did it kind of lose its soul? I mean, filmmakers have spoken about it, other novelists have also tracked it in their stories from the city. But can we mark a moment, a phase, a period when it tipped?
There's no question in my mind that it was the riots. There's no question.
This is the 1992-93 riots, which happened after the Babri Masjid was demolished.
After that, things were never the same. Mind you, I mean, I haven't written this, but the Shiv Sena was not particularly in its daily behavior an anti-Muslim party. I mentioned somewhere that, the Shiv Sena helps the local Muslim in his neighborhood or under his protection, so to speak, to go and get documentation, child in school, etc. They're not that way on a day-to-day level anti-Muslim. They turn anti-Muslim because of, political reasons. Before that, they were anti-Gujaratis or anti-Tamilians or anti-whatever. But it was just when he saw that, things had to be changed that he changed it. But I would say 92, 93 brought it all out in the open. Even under the skin, it was not that bad. Not at all. Not at all. And then when I went to Mumbai, there is a chapter on Mumbai, if you remember, which is on the outskirts. And I went to Mumbai, and many people I spoke to, and they had all moved there in the last 30 years or something like that, 30, 35 years, and built new lives. And that is a kind of self-enclosed area, which to any person who lives elsewhere in the city, if they go, they'll get shocked. And of course, they will blame the the person living there for saying, see, you come here and build ghettos. So this is how it will go.
Yeah. So Sidharth, these micro gatekeeping practices like broker rules, other social filters, this whole builders saying that there's a cultural fit in these places. How much have the elite in Bombay contributed to letting this kind of go on? Or do you see pockets of pushback? Because I'm sure if any society, elites push back, there is that translates into a societal pushback and change. Do you see any signs of that?
Yes, I do actually. Must confess, the complex that I live in, the society for our building, and the other buildings in the neighborhood are all completely, totally cosmopolitan. Anytime anyone has tried to on the WhatsApp group say something a little ugly, or not even ugly, but something suggestive, is immediately shot down.
That's really good. Yeah.
So it's not as if it's not, but it's I can't say the same about other places. But for example, a complex is being built in a very tony part of the city for only rich Marwadis, only rich, wealthy Marwadis, and the flats there are going for, I'm told, in the neighborhood of about 150 crores or plus. So those are there, but on a even on a social level, as far as the elite in quotes is concerned, it's not in their behavior. You won't find any kind of communal bias.
Okay. That's good to know. So your two chapters, the glittering city and the hidden city, together read together, make the title of this book very clear. Mumbai, a million islands. There are so many imaginaries there, but. Broadly speaking, I mean, fine, I'm glad that the elites are pushing back, even if in small measure. What about the poor? I mean, given the fact that they are being displaced on an almost regular basis, where the government sides with builders almost to displace them from land which is now precious and a vital economic commodity. Have they taken the fact of their displacement to be a fact of life? Have they accepted it? Or do you think there'll be pushback from that too?
They are under no they have no choice but to accept it, because most of them have been given apartments when they had none, and these apartments have been given virtually for free. They may have been picked up and placed far away. I must tell you that one of the one of the policies when the World Bank came here and walked around the city to check where its money was going, it found out that many of the projects it was funding were displacing people, and it insisted that those people be given housing. It insisted. So, a policy called Project Affected Persons policy was born, where they found land and they placed far away, but far, far, far away. I mean, and literally, if you read the Hidden City, it's close to garbage dumps.
Yeah, that's you use that.
So, but they were given no buses, no transportation, not even autos, no schools, obviously, no health facilities, nothing, and they are supposed to make a life for themselves. So they are in no position. So what some people do is, now there is a law which says that once you get a place from the government or a builder, you can't sell it for 5 or 10 years or something. In various places different. And what they do is find some legal loophole, power of attorney or whatever. In 2 years they sell it. They get good money for it, because property is property in the end of the day. Real estate always sells.
Yeah.
And then they take their money, go back to their villages and live well. So but they have no choice. So they can at best protest if they don't like who they are, where they're put, but nothing comes out of it.
Yeah.
So, and close by are complexes coming up which are super expensive. These contradictions have always existed, but what I've realized is that these contradictions are now almost solidified, like they're legitimized, and restaurants that come up are not for the working class but for the rich, fancy restaurants and all that kind of thing. So it's becoming a kind of, I found when I went to places in the West, something similar happening, of old residents being, they couldn't afford, because their laws are different, their social situation is different. This, I don't know whether this will apply to, let's say, Calcutta or Delhi or Chennai.
Yeah.
I may not. But it's becoming an exclusive zone for the well off.
Yeah. Some of this kind of pessimism, if I may, about, and not even pessimism, I would say realism about the way these fractures are becoming cast in stone almost and coming to be accepted. This kind of shows up when you speak of Dharavi and, the Adanis are now rebuilding it, and you seem almost convinced that they will just, they'll be shifted to garbage dump land, as you call it, in Deonar. But is that trajectory also kind of set in stone that they will end up like that? No better future that we can see if we are being realistic?
So the the Dharavi situation is quite complex and interesting, because they have what is called, if you are an illegal in Dharavi, you are
Oh
occupying
God.
land illegally anyway. But if you're an illegal, that means you are not a resident before a particular time, in this case 2001 or something, and therefore do not have papers. uh, you will get a place in Dharavi, somewhere in the corner, tucked away. But if you are an illegal, but you have been staying there for many years, like one of our stories showed that this, daughter was born there, grew up there, but she got married and moved out of her own marital home, and now she is counted as an illegal because she does not have papers before 2001. She will be given, so the state's generosity is boundless in these matters, as you know. And so also the Adani's generosity will have to be boundless, because he is bound by state laws. So they will be shifted to those places. And so there has been some protest by the Congress, by NGOs, etc., but it's coming to naught. And they will be shifted there. And that is going to become because these are large number of people. So that's going to become the model for large slums eradicated. Or
So
as
as
it's called, redeveloped. That's the word, the one word that everyone loves in this city, redeveloped.
So from development and vikas, we move to re-vikas or redevelopment. Yeah, that's good to know. It's a different word at least. So the other word that's really being bandied about is the mother, like the mother of all deals, the mother of democracy. But in a sense, Mumbai has been the mother of the idea of a city in India. So a lot of the kind of way in which you do urban living, infrastructure projects, buildings, etc., is mimicked by, say, Bangalore, by Delhi, by Pune. So, is there a way in which these other kind of urban models, people who are like Xeroxing Bombay in a way, can escape some of its very tragic mistakes and move to a better plan? Do you think that possibility exists, or are we all condemned to repeat these urban disasters, which can also turn into social disasters very quickly?
I would love to see this, but Bombay is Xeroxing the models of Singapore and
Oh
Dubai
God, yes.
without understanding what those projects meant, because there you're not likely to see slums anywhere, and Singapore has a different history. So our models are those. Let's make Bombay another Singapore. And we used to keep hearing policymakers say that for donkey's years. Let's make it another Dubai. When they go there, they see the glittering life and they want to turn that into it. But who is it for? Is the question. Secondly, Singapore has public housing. They do not get to see that. They just do not see what a public housing is. Now, they are not ideal, but they were built by the state, and the state found finance ways to finance, so that you moved in and you paid money over 30 years, but you had a house. So those models also come with some kind of social justice. They come. Singapore certainly does. It's not only glittering towers. So these places, the housing is no longer considered a public good. It's a private game. And this state was very progressive till the 1960s or 70s. housing was considered a public good. And that is faded away. I've met bureaucrats who have done so much for housing in this city, but they are no longer on the scene.
Yes, and I want to just bring this very fascinating and sometimes depressing, but of course uplifting as Bombay is, discussion to a close. And with the introduction that, and beyond the introduction, with the dedication rather that Sidharth has, it's from Kaifi Azmi's Makan, and he wrote this almost autobiographically when he was on the streets of Bombay before he transits to being one of the best known lyricists and poets that the Bombay film industry produced or can claim. He wrote, आज की रात बहुत गर्म हवा चलती है, आज की रात न फुटपाथ पे नींद आएगी, सब उठो, मैं भी उठूं, तुम भी उठो, तुम भी उठो, कोई खिड़की इसी दीवार में खुल जाएगी. A window will sort of open. So Sidharth, any lights, anything about this window that may still open? Kaifi, of course, made the leap from being an outsider to these windows and to being the possessor of one of the windows and one of those houses that he wrote of. Can we still hope for that mobility that Swapna Nagri, the city of dreams, Yeh Bombay Meri Jaan, is meant to be offering?
I think, even in the book, I find you'll see right in the beginning, there are stories of the way people live on the terrace, an entire community on the terrace of a building, and many other instances later of people finding some way to live. So I keep telling people, and they don't understand, because even the questions that you have asked, I keep telling them, I have not made it a seriously grim book. This is not a book about people feeling feeling that they are victims. There's no victimhood anywhere. There is only a resolve. And there is an urge, even in his words, there is some sense of wanting to live with dignity. It's not only a cry for rebellion, but it's also that there is that window will open and there'll be light in the window, and so therefore there is hope. This city has always survived on hope. I hate that phrase, the famous Bombay spirit. It's simply awful, cliched. It's not the Bombay spirit, it's the Bombay desperation. But to go and get, not miss work. But there is never a sense कि मेरी जिंदगी में क्या होगा आगे. There is never that sense. That boy whom I interviewed in this far-flung, in the last chapter, he's sitting there and he was studying, and he said that I've joined Elphinstone College. Yeah. To reach Elphinstone College for him must be such a monumental task, because there's no public transport and it's very far away. And he's joined Elphinstone College because then he wants to graduate and wants to become a police inspector. So I find that even that lady, Bombil Didi or Bombil B in Dharavi slum, who's lived there for 50 or plus years, says, someday somebody will come and redevelop. And she remembers the past, she remembers and says, then so-and-so got us running water, so-and-so got us a pakka house, etc. So these are our memories. It is not a question on hamari to kismat hi kharab ho gayi. Wo rona dhona nahi hai na. And I think that is what sustains this city. The non-rona dhona, to coin a phrase, of the average Mumbai person. And I don't want to say this is only among the marginalized lot. It's among everyone. कि भाई ये कुछ ना कुछ तो निकलेगा ही. Without jugaad, that too. Yeah. Mind you, the word jugaad doesn't come in any conversation in this city. That's the one thing I have never seen in my entire life.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sidharth, for writing this book, which is both a love letter and a warning, and as you said, from the non-Rona Dhuna of all Mumbaiites. And here's to hope resilience, and a fabulous city called Mumbai and a million islands. Thank you for watching.
Yes,
To all
yes.
the viewers of The Wire. Thank you, Sidharth, and goodbye.